little bit like optimization.
Okay. Familiarity with AppSec?
No, no.
Okay.
My name is Saurabh Bhandari and I'm a PHP developer. And here I have an experience of 4 years and I do create some extensions and plugins.
That's that. Okay. Go ahead, please tell me whether you already are familiar with some AppSec concepts, what AppSec concepts you're familiar with. Just throw about a few buzzwords, no problem.
Not familiar with these, but we do consider some other aspects also for the security purpose. So such as we use, the OOPS concepts are very, should be bright and we use it so that it won't be get breakable. The source code would not be too open to crack.
Okay.
Yeah, my name is Vikram. I am a and basically I have a fair bit of idea from the security point of view.
Excellent. Okay.
My name is Moni and I'm working as a
Okay.
And I'm working as a Java I think this organization is providing to me tools and to me into the market. I read about this in Wikipedia and I think security relates to like from the very basics, like providing a SQL injection to an application and to the top layer, like providing a firewall. Security matters from the top. Where do
yeah, it's not just SQL injection, it is not just firewalls, it's everything in between also. Fantastic. Okay. Okay. Security testing has not been part of scope of your activities so far. Okay. Yes. Yeah. Okay.
And I'm working as a software engineer, I work on web applications basically. And all about certificates and firewall, SQL injection. These are the basic concepts that we think that security matters.
Okay. So as we go forward today, you will have a chance to look at our buzzwords and see if you're already familiar with them. If you're already familiar with them, Gurpreet and Rochak will breeze through them. If you want them to go a little bit slow, just give us a hint. Okay. So I'll be doing the introductions today, and then the bulk of the material would be handled by Gurpreet Kaur, who is project manager in VXL India, and Rochak Chauhan, a software architect with Haryana government. If both of them are volunteers for our Null and OWASP Chandigarh chapters, so let's see. You can drive their pace. Okay. So as I see, some of you are already familiar with some of the concepts, so we can breeze through them. Yes, please.
This is Rajkumar. I'm working as a developer, and I'm a little bit about familiar with the security aspects of the application. So I think this starts from the basic of the code when you are writing a set of the code, and till it remains there till you are solving the application to your end user. So I think there are lots of things in between over there. So that all should be incorporated and should be kept in mind when you are doing an application and stuff.
How many of you, including you because you brought it up, of course, go beyond just principles of secure coding? Look at security as an integral part of design, security as a part of the overall software development lifecycle. Would you elicit security requirements when you start off working on a project? Okay, for example, do you ask your customer, is it okay to have login from multiple devices? many applications that we work with do allow multiple logins from multiple devices simultaneously. Okay, but when we develop specific applications for specific customers, the customer, if you ask him specifically, say, no, I don't see any reason, for example, his customers, why a doctor in a public health center would want to log in from multiple systems at the same time. Either he is approving a birth from this machine or that machine, but not 4 machines simultaneously. Okay, so it's a security requirement. Okay, so this goes far beyond secure coding alone, right? It's not just SQL injection; it's security requirement that comes in. Okay, so things like, is there a need to have device-specific policies? Are some of the application functions required to be accessed from specific secure internal systems only, intranet only? Okay, we come across some of those systems. So, how many of you guys have seen security requirements become an essential part of your development? Good. Okay, yeah, please let us continue. We'll try and cover the back row also simultaneously, so that we don't have to do another pass. Fabulous. Okay.
My name is Ravi, and I am working at Java
In?
Infrastructure.
It's one of our products.
Oh, okay. Cool. Security, application security, how familiar are you?
So not much more than familiar with security, but I know that I am getting more support. It is written in languages. So a lot of things in this, I can say that in many years in security.
So myself, this one I'm working here from last month. And I have also not too much idea about security, but security is one of the essential parts of software development life cycle.
I'm Pradeep Kumar. I'm working as a fighter. Not much familiar.
I'm a Java engineer. I'm more aware about the issues.
My name is Kalpit Gupta and I'm working here as a Java trainee and I'm very much aware of about security, like secret development.
My name is Anita. I am working as a project developer and security I do like
Little louder. I heard SQL injection from a lot of people. Anything more? SSL from a couple of people. Anything else?
As a front-end developer, have you been incorporating anything related to front-end? No.
And my name is Asif Khatri and I'm working as a developer. According to me, application security is preventing any unintended data manipulation and restricting your source code, restricting the exposure of the source code to any hacker or preventing any manipulation.
Among other things. Okay, that's one way of looking at it. Absolutely.
This is India. I'm a developer. Other exam provides the security while developing application, and I'm a little familiar with this.
I see many of you are ROR developers. The thing about frameworks, anybody who's using some framework or the other, is that most frameworks these days already have certain built-in provisions. Okay, some of them are turned on, some of them are not turned on, but they're allowed. They leave to you to turn them on. So those of you who are already working with with some frameworks, fabulous. Okay, for example, if you're working only with Java, not so much. But if you're working with Struts, Hibernate, Spring, whatever else, then you have some additional features that you can use. You're working only ASP, not so much. .NET, good, because now you're using a framework and the framework has certain built-in provisions. Okay, PHP, if you're using simple PHP, well, it's a huge burden on you to put the security pieces in there. You're using some framework. Okay, fabulous. He uses, for example, he is our PHP ace. He uses the YII framework. It has a whole lot of security provisions. So those of you who are frameworks users will be slightly ahead. okay, which is in any case the right way to go. There's no point in you writing everything from scratch when there is a fabulous framework around for you, right? Yes, please.
I am moving area. I am the Java developer, but I have no much experience.
Okay.
I am myself little bit concerned about simplification.
Okay. Yes, please. That is interesting. Okay, can you tell me a little bit more? You're familiar with the intruder related stuff, is what you said. Can you tell us a bit more about it? How many? So you look at it from the infrastructure side or from the application software side? Okay, do you do development? Software testing. Okay, fabulous. So we do look at today, okay, depending on how time permits, we will go into, if time permits, we'll go into detail. If it doesn't, we'll just quickly touch upon application level intrusion detection. Okay, so good idea. I see we have a few more people who come in. Yes, please.
Yeah,
Pardon me? Okay. Okay. Familiar with AppSec? Yeah. Cool. So good. You folks are coming.
Gaurav, I'm the QA manager here. I'm familiar with OWASP.
Fabulous. Okay. So you can actually pitch in and try and help us out a little bit here. Okay. From the overall picture that I got, okay, what we will try and do is introduce some of the basics, okay, because there seems to be a sort of a 50-50 split, okay. Quite a few people said they're familiar with SQL injection, but didn't mention anything else. So we'll try and go more than SQL injection. Though SQL injection is a starting point. You can probably just like, get past. Don't spend too much time on SQL injection. Spend time on more on other things. And as we do with any program, free or otherwise, okay, this is of course a completely free program. There is always a commercial, and there is always a link to something else, right? So I'll begin with the commercials first. Of course, it's not a commercial organization; it's a completely not-for-profit organization. So I'll begin with an introduction to OWASP and null Chandigarh chapters and our activities. I'll promise to take no more than 10 minutes. Okay, and some of the more detailed pieces. Okay, yeah. Some of the more advanced pieces. Okay, they are difficult to cover just in an hour and a half to 2 hours that we have today. Right? So what we will do is that we will try and cover them in subsequent sessions, either here in dedicated sessions, or for example, during monthly meetings that we have as a part of OWASP. Okay.
So null and OWASP, it has periodic meetups. So in our one our meeting, not very often, but again, it's comfortable.
We do monthly meetings, and every one of our meetings are technical talks. Okay, the next meeting is actually in your neighborhood, Net Solutions. Okay, March 7th it will be, and I will be talking about content security policy and maybe one other advanced topic. Okay, content security policy we'll just be talking very, very superficially today because it is a fairly difficult concept to grasp and implement. Okay, it tends to break applications that have been designed without CSP in mind. And today, 99% or maybe more of the applications are designed without CSP in mind. We do not compartmentalize. So some of those pieces I would encourage you to come to our monthly meetings, or if there is sufficient interest, we will come here and do more of those. But first, okay, our typical 30-second advertisements. Okay. OWASP, some of you are already familiar with Open Web Application Security Project. It's a not-for-profit organization, okay, set up specifically to improve web application security in the world. Okay, that is its primary mission. There are certain core values that OWASP goes with. Okay, it has to be open. Okay, in fact, some of the internal words that we use are radically open. Practically every single discussion that we have is available for public. on our mailing list. You can go and look at our mailing list. You don't have to be a member. Okay. OWASP does have membership fee. $50 is the membership fee. Sometimes they run some promos for $20. Okay. But in order to attend our monthly meetings, you don't need to be an OWASP member. All our monthly tech talks are completely free for people to walk in and attend and not pay any money at all. Okay. We have a clear policy that we are strictly vendor neutral. We do not endorse any vendor or vendor products. Okay. And the key thing to remember is that it is a web application security project. Okay. Also, in Chandigarh is the Null Chandigarh. Okay. Null is another open information security not-for-profit organization. Okay. It's registered as a non-profit in Pune. Okay. And again, it is open. All code, both of OWASP as well as for Null, any code, any presentation material that we do is completely free of charge for anybody to take. Okay, and reuse for any purpose whatsoever. Okay, and Null, as an additional piece, Null doesn't have a membership fee at all. Okay, and you are a member when you're interested and you come in, and if you're uninterested and you didn't come in, then that day you are not. Okay, so it is like, completely voluntary in every sense of the word. Okay, and in Chandigarh, okay, we have been running Null and OWASP for about 1.5 years. Okay, most of the months we have at least one meeting, and meetings like this meant for specifically for organizations. We have done about 15-20 so far. Okay, and some of these are what we call as make safe online. Okay, you guys are software developers. Okay, and we want you to make the online world safer by building secure applications. Okay, so I will cover a little bit about why this has become so important now. Okay, the last year and this year we've seen phenomenal changes. So that's something. We also run a program called the Be Safe Online. Okay, and the Be Safe Online program is primarily meant for non-IT professionals. Okay, whether it's students, whether it is office goers who use computers and smartphones, and what are secure behaviors. Okay, how do you be alert and be safe with your email? How do you be safe with your online commercial activities, whether you're doing purchases on Flipkart, whether you're doing your online banking, okay, or whether you're simply accessing your email, as I said. Okay, how do you mind your safety with your mobile applications? Okay, so those kind of stuff are what we talk about in Be Safe Online. Both these are behavioral change programs, so we ask people to actually take a pledge that from now on, I will do everything to learn more and more about making software more secure, making IT systems more secure, okay, or use stuff more securely and then learn the corresponding concepts, okay. So today's program is an introduction to application security. As and when there are demands, okay, we have some language specific guys, not so much in Java, not so much in Ruby on Rails, but to some extent Java we can handle. Ruby on Rails, of course, your own guys can handle quite a bit because most of the Ruby on Rails guys are already familiar with security. Okay, but concept-wise, anything that you want to drill deeper, depending on how time permits will go in. Okay, content, of course, I have liberally borrowed in the spirit of OWASP. Okay, from Jim Manico and Leon Carey, both of them have been global board of directors at OWASP, and some of the material on the ASP.NET we also borrowed from Troy Hunt, okay, who is OWASP Australia guy, right? He's also an Microsoft MVP. Now, this is just 2014. Okay, and depending on whom you ask, this is categorized in many different ways. So I put in some of the less controversial categorizations. Okay, so we are looking at a phenomenally high amount of data breach. Okay, and 2015 has started off pretty much on the same note. Right in January, we had 3 high-profile breaches. February followed up with another big one, Anthem. I don't know how many of you folks are following the Anthem news. Anthem is an insurance provider, okay, and 80 million records. Yesterday they corrected it to 78.8. Okay, Okay, big relief, 1.2 million saved. Okay, okay, 78.8 million records, of which about 1.4 million they're saying that they are not able to figure out who the users are. Their own databases are not fully correlated. Okay, plus another 20 million, okay, of outside their insurance programs, additional users that have been about 18.8 million additional records who are not their subscribers. Present subscribers, past subscribers over the past 10 years, and some non-subscribers. All of them have been affected in February. Okay, we are still in months of February, right? Okay. Number of breach incidents by type, identity theft. This is going the maximum these days. Okay, yes, they want your credit cards, but as much as they want your credit cards, they find it much easier to find your credentials, login credentials. Okay, so those of you who are designing access control systems, password storage, user tables, practically every application that I know, okay, has their own user tables. Okay, and until I walked into one of our application systems, every single small application has its own user table. The same customer. Okay, 14 different systems, 14 different user tables. Okay, and luckily, if one or two of them made user secure storage for the user credentials, you can bet that there are 10 others which are not. Because secure credential storage is not that easy. Okay, we are all used to the simplest possible thing. Let us get it working and go. Okay, so identity theft, credentials, okay, financial access. These are things which are most often taken through application. Use application and application weaknesses as the entry points. Okay, there is, depending on whose survey you believe, there is a little bit of back and forth on whether application security breaches are very heavy or insider threats, people copying the databases and going away, are heavier. Viruses, worms, and trojans are heavier, and so forth. Okay, I think we can safely say that even those large organizations which have a lot of firewalls, IDSs, IPSs, and so forth, okay, the hackers find it much easier to walk through the front door and take it away and go, because no matter how many firewalls you put, you have to leave your web application open. It has to be on 443 or on 80. And it is open, you can't stop. Okay, so the responsibility is a lot more on us to do stuff. Okay, various kinds of, I'm sure Trantor serves a whole bunch of customers. Okay, this is how the industry span out in 24. Okay, according to one survey. This is from 2014. I'm just putting only a few here. Okay, this is a huge infographic which has over 20 pieces, and this is only till October. Beyond that, also a lot more has happened. Okay. Now, if this many breaches are happening, it is not because customers are not spending money. Okay, customers are yearly increasing the security spend, buying more firewalls, buying more IDSs. We are probably the only industry in the world who keeps spending more money and delivering less. Okay, and one of the reasons for that is because our industry sales guys, okay, fortunately none of the software guys, okay, sales guys say you have to buy this new blinky light thingy. Okay, and so this doesn't replace any one of them, layered defense, and layered defense means more of everything. Okay, there are customers who have put layers and layers and layers. All it means is more boxes with blinky lights. Okay, how much they help? Results show no, they don't have a whole lot. So the way to look at is to try and find those boxes and those blinky lights that actually give some security, not simply put 10 security guards, all of them checking the same phone number. I have seen in airports, I have seen in Delhi, many of the commercial malls, every security guy checks the same thing. And every security guy wants your mobile number and ID card copy. And there are enough horror stories that these mobile numbers and ID card copies are being sold behind. The security processes themselves are not secure. There are enough loopholes there. Okay, so in IT it is very similar. Okay, having more layers, having more blinky lights doesn't mean security. And what we will do here is to try and see where it is that we are making this and how we can fix things. Okay, so more is all that people keep asking. Okay, when it comes to software, okay, what we do is in terms of proportion, huge amount, a huge secure software development team developing, let's say, software, okay, in the order of man years. Okay, yet security testing, not overall QA, security testing alone is probably 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And the application security testers of the people that I know how it is that you folks do, you should be able to tell. Okay, if they always come in the end, they are not there from the beginning. And if they are given the task of being gatekeepers, two things happen. Your projects gets delayed. Your developers and project managers hate QA guys. Okay, QA guys hate you because you do all the delays. Okay, every time we deliver nahi hota, but the release date doesn't get changed. So the QA guys still have to finish their things, stay all night, come release it or stay all night. And heaven forbid if they find some defects and say, no, we can't pass it. Project manager doesn't like his face, the developer doesn't like his face. What we did, okay, in my experience, it simply didn't work for us. So we said the QA guys, the security testers are not gatekeepers. They don't stand outside your development cycle. Stand there and say, like in one of those movies, thou shalt not pass. Stand down. I don't know how many of you guys see that movie, Lord of the Rings or something like that, right? And so Gandalf stands up there and then says, thou shalt not pass to some evil background. Okay? Security guys, QA guys, if they stand outside the gate and say, thou shalt not pass, it's a lose-lose game. Okay? So this is the mistake that we're doing. Okay, if you guys are already familiar and you know what that guy is going to slap and send back, okay, you can save a whole lot of agony all around for everyone. Because ultimately he's not doing the building, you're doing the building. Okay, I give another example in my BSafe online pieces. Okay, it doesn't make so much of sense for technical people because you guys understand technical people. I say if you were to give this contract of building this room to somebody who is not really an accomplished building professional, and he says, sir, cement or bricks, they're all very expensive and very difficult to deal with. ऐसा करते हैं, थोड़ा आटा गूंद के, make thing, and if कम पड़ गया, then we'll add some pre-air and somehow make things happen. Believe me, 4 walls. Your SRS says 4 walls. I gave you 4 walls and a roof. Okay, robustness is not part of my thing. 2 दिन में हिल गया, not my problem. Okay, because you have done atta and paneer in the walls, okay, instead of cement. If mice are coming in, not my problem. Because security, you didn't ask for secure development. You asked for 4 walls and a roof. And if, like, our blue turban back there makes a hole in this wall and comes in, leaving the secure bioprint, let us say biometric security pieces out there on the door, has been bypassed because he has been able to make a hole here in the wall or in that window, not my problem. You asked for biometric security, I gave you biometric security on the door. User ID, password, 2-factor authentication. This is how our application security guys are developing applications. Okay, rather, okay, if we build security into the piece, rather than saying security services, please hire the blue turbans, they will charge you 20 lakhs more for penetration testing and remediation. No, it must be built in along with the wall. When the walls come, they must be absolutely strong. When your software walls are erected, they must be absolutely strong. That is the piece that we need to look at, not this. Your application is up and running, okay, and your security testing guys are doing once a year, twice a year. but your attackers are there all throughout the year. Your security testers go home in the night, your attackers are not going home in the night. They are waiting for the night to come so that you, okay, happens. It took less than 2 days of delay in patching for one of our applications, okay, to get hacked by something like, what was the bash bug that came out? Pardon me? Bash bug. The SSH was the heartbleed. After the heartbleed, okay, there was a bash vulnerability that came out.
Yeah.
Right? Now, the bash vulnerability, the mirrors, the operating system mirrors for our version of Linux on the servers, pushed the code out sometime around April 8th or 9th. April 7th, I think, was the bash bug announced. Okay, and till the 11th, our hosting provider mirrors did not replicate it, even though outside operating system vendors did it. So my admin was only checking with my hosting provider and on their mirrors. It was not there. 2 days, servers are gone. It only took 2 days for the guys to scan as many servers on as many hosting providers as possible and find unpatched servers and get in. They are just waiting for you. Okay, so it doesn't make sense for us to follow the gatekeeper technique and a gatekeeper method. Okay, application development is no longer simple. We ourselves, for example, are out here in Trantor. How much of it is internal development? We are actually outsourced to others, right? So there are subcontractors. Some of us are employees. Some of us are subcontractors. Subcontractors work for Oracle. If you guys are using Oracle, if you guys are using MS SQL Server, you think everything is written by Microsoft developers? No. Okay, or Oracle developers. Subcontractors come in. Okay. Third-party APIs, they don't develop everything from scratch. No smart developer develops everything from scratch. Okay, I removed all the lines. This was originally a Eon Kerry slide with spaghetti lines all over the place. I tried to clean it up a little bit at the loss of some information. Okay. So whether it is outsourced development, whether it is internal development, there are a lot of components that are coming in with various degrees of trust. Okay, not everybody follows the same method. Not everybody's output can be trusted at the same level. So it is not a simple straight line piece anymore. So it is a complex piece. That is during development. During deployment, again the same thing. There are way too many moving parts. And securing each one of them. You need to secure the application, you need to secure the various servers that are out there with various security parameters. Okay, and you need to secure the network also. People should not get into your network. Okay. Someone was talking about intrusion, right? There's the lady who talked about intrusion. Yes. Yes. So what we will do today is not to try and cover everything. Okay, that's probably a week-long course. But we'll look at a few, not even all the top 10. We will have time for them. Okay, we'll look at a few. We'll use this as a broad guide. We'll look at a few more that may not have been directly implied from here, which we find more and more important. So we will find some numbering in the slides which are beyond the A1 to A10. We made our own E1 to E4, okay, which we think will be useful. Okay. So with that introduction, I ask Gurpreet to come over and start the main piece. I have the presentation. So you can run it from here. You don't need to skip. It's not just
like step back.
Unless they have questions.
They need to pull the chairs.
Then we need to open up the windows and. No, don't do that. Feedback is for the. Feedbacks on. We need a bigger conference room. You can come over. If you're comfortable, there's at least one seat over there. Just, you know what? Just come over. You know, it's hard to have people walk over. Just have a seat. Thank you.
Let's start from here. Very good morning to all of you. Sir has just briefed you about the OWASP and the other aspects. Now coming up to what we do on a daily basis. We start with a project, the sales guys bring in the project, we get, what happens is, it's given here is closed, it's given further to the project manager, team leads, and the resources are all gathered, right? This is the way and we start working. So very first day, it's our moral duty to make sure if the customer or the client is not sure, we have to guide him that we need to give him a secure. So we can give him suggestion that these are the things we need to incorporate in any of the projects. So that is the first part from wherein we can say the developer can do some add-on on his effort, right? So then comes the database, front-end part, and then the coding part. Everything goes into a testing mode and then it's the delivery part. So we'll come to the database, that is the 10 warnings, 10 main issues which we'll be taking up. You cannot secure an application based on top 10 list. There are many other aspects also we have to take, right? Coming up to top 10, A1 is the injection. As we had just discussed about the injection, it's a term which can be utilized for other aspects also. For a database, it's a SQL. For other browser-based injections, it's a different concept. So coming up to injection first, everybody is familiar with single quote and the semicolon. So what is it? We always use it, right? Coming up to the SQL injection, what is it? Here you can see a small code snippet. Everybody can understand it, what it is, right? It's very easy. What happens after the injection? We are updating the entire emails of the users with an injection, right? So how we need to avoid this? Now we are talking about the database. Maybe you're using some other database. So what can be done?
So what is the database?
Like the database, I'm saying SQL, MySQL, different as database aspects. So how we can prevent this, right? We write inline queries at times, right? Do we write? Yes. Do you think it's the correct way? Inline queries, dynamic queries, or wherever we are using a single quote along, we are giving a loop for someone to enter into our SQL database, right? So what we need to do is do everything in a parameterized way, right? Wherein we can protect our injections, okay? So stored procedures, inside the stored procedures, user parameterized for PHP, .NET, you can see here everything is coming into a parameterized manner. So we can make sure that database doesn't get updated, right? These are the code snippets for Java.
Can you also please, just press that first slide just a little more because we also have some QA people and they might be wondering what just happened.
If you want to see the entire functionality, how it is going on. So we have the video. So we can play the video for SQL injection so that they can have the entire view of how the database is being accessed. Otherwise, it will be taken up in another video. It will come in a very small. I'll just show you a little.
What is SQL injection? Don't developers know any better? Years of development have gone by since we know about this attack, and developers are still vulnerable to it. That's what some people say to me. Hey, why are we still vulnerable? SQL injection is still vulnerable. SQL injection is so old. No, the SQL injection point is it's very.
Just show it. So is it okay if we stop you in between, ask questions, or would you like to keep it for you?
Because many things might you get covered once you go.
Sure.
जैसे ये लाइट्स कहाँ पे है इसकी स्विच कहाँ पे
And learning about injection attacks is a great place to start. So in the next 10 minutes, we're going to go through a common type of injection attack known as SQL injection. We'll then take a look at some other types of injection attacks. I'll show you some common fixes, and towards the end of the video, I'll point you to some useful articles and source code you can learn more. So let's get started. First of all, injection attacks are a very serious problem. To give you some idea, every few years, the OWASP Foundation puts out a list of the top security risks for enterprise web applications, known as the OWASP Top 10. The list reflects the collective judgment of the So this is definitely something every web architect, developer, and tester needs to be very familiar with. And what makes it so dangerous is that it's easy to exploit. It's pretty common in web applications, and the impact can be quite severe. So to make sure that we all have the same idea of what an injection attack is, let's do a quick example of the kind of injection attack you're most likely to see, SQL injection. So let's imagine an application that contains a simple form asking for user data. And to keep things simple, we're just going to throw one field, the name field. Now, as developers, we're normally told how the application should work, and then we create it. So we imagine the user will fill out the form and then hit submit, where the data will leak.
Normally what happens, we have a login, right? So just giving the user name here.
Machine will be sent across the internet, where it will wind up entering our web application. Now, most web developers make heavy use of databases to store and retrieve data. And to talk to the database, we use a language called SQL. So very often, the data that was entered by our users winds up as part of these SQL statements. You can see the developers here joining a fragment of the SQL statement together.
I hope it is clear to all of you what is happening. Most of the developers and the testers.
Has anyone written such a code?
with the user supplied data update command. This command is sent to the database, where the database interprets and runs the command. So this is where the problems start. The application does work, but the way the code was written is definitely not secure. So let's look at the same application, but this time let's see what happens when we add a little extra something to the user data. Like last time, I'll enter my name, but this time I'll put a little SQL at the end. I'll hit submit and send a request across the internet to the target web application. Like before, the user supplied data is joined together with the SQL, but this time, the bit of SQL I added to the end of my name.
So what has been added? The injection.
Actually alters the intended purpose of the SQL statement. The quotes line up perfectly to make a valid SQL statement. But now, this time, instead of just selecting the records for one name, it pulls down all the records, which is exactly how attackers pull up attacks like this. For example, in a recent case, attackers stole close to 200,000 unencrypted user passwords and 500,000 user emails from a very popular tech website. And in another attack, due to SQL injection, 30 million customer records were stolen from a popular online dating website. As you can see, SQL injection is a huge risk, where a single code flaw leads to massive data loss. It can even result in attackers taking over your entire database server. For more information, you can check out the OWASP presentation called Advanced SQL Injection to Operating System Full Control by Bernardo Gamele. To make matters even worse, it's not just databases. Any interpreter used by your web application can potentially have this problem. So what are the interpreters commonly used by web applications? Well, obviously databases. And for authentication, very frequently you'll have LDAP servers, plus an array of XML-based technologies like XSLT, XPath, and other XML messaging formats. In addition, most web applications keep log files, which are not interpreted, but attackers can actually inject into them new lines so that they can add fake log entries. And in some cases, we have web applications that call shell scripts on the server, where if you're not careful, you can wind up submitting user-supplied data directly to the command line, essentially giving attackers shell access to your web server. Definitely not a good thing. And of course, nearly every...
These videos are available on the web. You guys can go look it up. OWASP channel on the YouTube. Okay. But the primary piece that we're talking about here is that any input that comes from outside, more often than not, it is from the user interface, but it is not limited to the user interface. It could be from any external system for which you have built APIs and stuff. Okay? Any input that is coming from outside, you must treat as untrusted. Don't expect that they will give you exactly what you want. Instead, write code assuming that they will try to break it. Okay? And of course, SQL injection, she will tell you what is the, you want to use the presentation from your machine. Access करके आपके पास होगा ना, तो yeah, no problem. This one I'll share. Pardon? This is as a business. Good. So this one, if I write it.
That's some idea how it works. So what we have to take care of is the entire, whatever we are writing the queries, how we are getting back the data. Now, in the database, we all are saving the records, the passwords. So what is happening is, now through SQL or any of the database versions you are using, you are just fetching the records from front end and saving it into the database. You all take care of your things very nicely. Your cards, your passwords, right? And when we give any application to a user, So we have, usually everybody has authentication, that means username and password. How secure, we make sure how secure their passwords are. Anybody who has done something for the password security. Like now what we did is, we are talking about the database, now we are taking the input from the user, how we are saving it, in what manner are we saving it. Most important is the passwords. Our own passwords, do you think, are they secure wherever we are using on the web? We feel, we keep them in written somewhere, we are not sure. अभी तो वो server पे कहीं ना किसी के हाथ में तो है ये. How secure are we? Maybe your internet passwords, your banking passwords, your email password, we don't share. If I ask you to give me your password, will you? Nobody. But you have given it to someone in the database. So we'll just expert on passwords and how he takes care of his laptop. Nobody can log into his laptop.
Okay, so we finished the injection. Broken authentication in session management is OWASP number 2. We will not be covering all aspects. In fact, most of you folks, I think session management, especially, most of you folks are reasonably okay. Okay, so broken authentication, especially authentication related pieces, is what we'll be talking about, not the regular stuff that OWASP talks about that you can go back and look up. Okay, the first piece that we'll be talking about is password defenses from the form side. Okay. So when you have a form, okay, even today, I see quite a few forms which send passwords over GET. So on the screen, you'll find question mark, username equals, password equals. And, okay, 2 months ago, I was looking at one of the competitions, okay, one of the business plan competitions that was being talked about, where the submissions were supposed to be done on HTTP. Okay, so what is the most common thing that can happen when you submit a form on HTTP? Anybody who is listening on the WAX, anybody who has access to the network, an intruder on the network, can sniff the traffic and see everything that you're sending and everything that is coming back. That is clearly not secure design, because most of us don't operate on a one machine network. Okay, if in the office, if you're logging in into some important system, and if you're logging in using HTTP, then anybody who has access to your office network, in a manner of speaking, has access to everything that you're typing, including your user ID, password, bank account number, whatever else. Okay, those of you who are familiar with networks will need to know just a bit more. For example, nowadays we use a lot more of switching networks. So that means that anybody who is on the backbone, which has access to some sort of a span port, has access to all these pieces. Okay, but why do you want to leave it open? You don't want, if you're using, for example, any open Wi-Fi, anything that is going on in open Wi-Fi is clearly available for others. Okay, so use HTTPS, use POST. Don't let shoulder surfers see on the URL bar your user ID and password. So when you develop software, absolutely no GET, only POST. Okay, do not display input type equals password, not input type equals text. Okay, so the browser knows how to handle it. Okay, this is a little bit of many users. Okay, lean towards usability over security. Okay, in many cases, we do ask autocomplete to be on. Okay, there are equal number of cases where they say no, there should not be an autocomplete. If you are using browser stores to fill, then maybe. Personally, I don't use the browser store because not all browsers are completely vendor independent. Okay, so to some extent, yeah, call it subjective. So to some extent, I may like Firefox more than Chrome because Google is built on an ad revenue based business, whereas Firefox is not. Okay, and ad revenue means only one thing: they need to know more and more about you. Okay, privacy is secondary to ad building. So I'm pretty sure many of us use Chrome, and when you build applications, you build it to run on Chrome, right? So this, you may have to think in secure design. This, no-brainer. Okay. Store password. This is an area where absolutely 90% of the programmers have problems. Okay. I've had guides seen on the net, okay, ASP guides, okay, majorly guilty. There are too many people out there posting on the net how to write ASP code. Okay, this is exactly the way, and actually it is insecure. PHP programmers are notorious for saying this is the best way to write. They publish a guide, and some of us Google it and go take a look at it. It's a mess. Okay, so you have a problem if you are in the Googling world and trying to find some of these pieces. If your source is not good enough, you will get a bad idea of the whole thing. Okay, so what are the good practices? First thing, when you're capturing, do not limit the type of characters. Okay, major violator HDFC Bank. The number of the various accept in the password field is very limited. Okay, single quote, semicolons, and a few and a whole lot of other extra characters are all banned. Only very small number of special characters are allowed. What does it do? It allows the brute force attackers to run through your available characters much faster. Okay, so do not limit the type of characters. This says do not limit the length. In fact, yes, do not make the length too unreasonable. Again, one example that I have of HDFC Bank, I don't know how many of you bank with HDFC Bank online. Okay, 15 characters is the max. 15 characters, alphanumeric with very limited special characters, far easily brute forceable than, let us say, unlimited special characters and not 15, but let us say 250 characters. Today, my average password length is about 55-60 characters. I never see my passwords. I generate them randomly through my password manager. And I want my bank, I want my shopping cart to permit me to use my password manager because I want to be more secure. So you guys, when you're writing applications, you want to be able to support more security conscious folks like me, rather than force users to be less secure. Okay, and then on Twitter and in customer support emails, for your safety and for your security, we have limited the password to 15 characters. Okay, what? You limited the number of characters. But there is a downside. I put an asterisk out here. The downside is that if you make the length way too much, okay, there was a case that I had heard of, I had not seen it myself. Somebody, through an intercepting proxy, tried to send a 16 million character password because that wise guy followed this advice to the letter. Denial of service. The authentication system died. Okay, so do limit it, but don't keep the limit far too less. I would recommend 200 plus characters, fabulous. Okay, 1000 characters, pretty okay. Try not to go beyond that, but you never know. You may come to a world where 1000 character passwords are easily cause quantum computing. Okay, so we'll see. So limiting passwords to protection against it. So trying to do the limiting, it will fail. Rather, you need to follow different methods. Okay, instead of limiting the characters, use the encoders and decoders. Then there is advice. The net is full of advice, especially like I said, ASP and PHP. Okay, they call encoding, base64 encoding as encryption. I'm afraid no, there is a huge difference between base64 encoding and encryption. Okay, do not follow such methods. Look for proper, okay, hashing. Hashing is not exactly encryption. Okay, but we will also talk about encryption as a technique next. Okay, in a particular way. Hashmax is what we use. Okay, protect only passwords. How many of you are familiar with the concept of salt? Not bad, quite a few of you. Okay, for those of you who do not, what we're talking about is that if two people accident password, by looking at the database, I should not be able to figure out ek ka malum hai to dusre ka malum pad gaya. That is the purpose of salt. Okay, what do we do? Even if two people accidentally use the same password, inside the database storage, they have different hash strings. Passwords are stored differently because you added a random string to the password and then hashed it. Okay, and do not depend on the random string being hidden or split and stored separately under the pieces. The random string can be stored right there in the user table itself. Okay, then people, programmers especially, have a doubt. If I'm putting the random strings right there, can't the attackers find out? Okay, so those of you who are familiar with it, I'll give one opportunity. What exactly are we fighting here? If we are storing the salt right in the database tables, what threat model are we defending against? Anyone wants to try?
We are trying to avoid person to just match two fields and say, okay, these are the same.
Not only match two fields, but mass brute force attacks. Somebody gets a database dump. Okay, if you don't use the salt, okay, they crack one. They use GPU hash crackers kind of stuff. Okay, GPU accelerated crackers, and they went through. That's what happened with LinkedIn, right? 16 million passwords, and a huge number of them they went through in no time. Okay, why? I put a GPU, I found one, and I found a lot of others. Okay, I tried password 123, and 400 guys who use password 123 are all cracked one shot. But if I use salt, then for each of the 400, I have to crack separately. So what I'm doing is that I'm raising the cost of the attacker to do mass attacks. Okay, so what happens is that as long as the benefit that he gets, okay, is at a very cheap cost, he is motivated to attack. If the cost of attack is higher than the benefit, if you made it more expensive, then you have taken away his motivation. At least the profit motivation. Okay, somebody who's very angry, you're angry with your boss, right? No. Then, yeah, profit is no longer the motive. Then $1,000 more, no problem.
Well, ideally, shouldn't the application not allow mass records to be sent back?
The application itself will not. Okay, we are looking at various threat models. Okay, so this particular password storage piece is not about through the application people coming and taking, but taking a dump of the entire database, maybe through a SQL injection, maybe through a backdoor entry into the database server itself. Okay, any which way, one threat model or the other. If they get a dump of your database, password storage, okay, or if your sysadmin has taken a dump, your sysadmin should not be, database admin should not be able to figure out the passwords of your users.
So there's one thing, like the MD5 encryption mode is available in the PHP.
Hashing.
Yeah,
it is not encryption. Yeah.
It's a kind of hashing, but it converts the data into some.
Yes, it does.
String.
Yes.
So there is no decryption is available right now.
Yes.
How would they track
Hashing are one-way pieces, but MD5 has now become, at some point in time, it was considered expensive, but now with the computing advances, MD5 computations have become fairly simple. Okay, and there are enough on the web, okay, wherein you can try and crack passwords through forward brute forcing. You use a dictionary, okay, and there are many researchers out there who build dictionaries of all the leaked passwords anywhere in the world. Millions and millions of passwords. People collect those passwords and use them as dictionaries. कहीं ना कहीं किसी ने पासवर्ड जैसा यूज किया होगा तो आपने भी उन्हीं में से कुछ यूज किए होंगे.
MD5 is using for each key unique character.
Pardon me?
MD5 is using each key a unique character, like I had inserted my name as MD5. So last key is D. There I found that it's not a random, it's just inserting something.
I think it has, from as a hash function, it has passed quite a bit of scrutiny. The only issue with MD5 that we're talking about is that it is not as expensive for hackers, okay, as we would like it to be.
Yeah,
okay?
If we enter something, and again if we enter something same, so the password would be the same. So
yes, if you don't use salt. So number one, yes, MD5 is not too bad, okay? Try and use SHA-1, SHA-256, SHA-384 or SHA-512, okay? And we'll talk about something more, especially for password storage. We'll talk about something better, okay, in the next slide. Use a salt. So even if you use MD5, using a salt makes it far more expensive.
One more query that you were saying that we can save salt and password in the same table. But if a hacker gets a like dump of that table, so he is getting a whole key.
Yes,
But
that is why I talked about the threat model. The threat model is not to prevent individual brute forcing, okay, rather to prevent mass brute forcing. I brute force one, I should not discover 20 other because they are all using the same password. That is why we use a sort. And it must be random. There are many programmers who use the user ID as a piece, okay. You can try and automate those.
But if we can say start in a different table and pass it in different table,
That's also possible. But a guy who can dump one table can probably also dump the other table. If he has gotten into your database, nothing preventing him from dumping the other table. Okay? So that is why don't depend on it. Always raise the barriers. Anywhere where you can raise a barrier, by all means raise the barrier. Okay? But don't depend on secrecy and obscurity. That's the point.
Security is never perfect. And so you just make it.
Yeah, you make it more and more difficult. Okay? Absolute security requires you to not have an application in the first place. Shut down your server. Okay, my sysadmin did that once. We were doing a pen test. He got an alarm on his screen saying that, like, somebody is attacking. He thought he was making a configuration change to ban that IP alone. He made a mistake. Okay, instead of banning the IP, he shut down the whole server by banning everything else. Pura system ban, sir, my system is very secure. Every user out there is crying. Okay, yeah, that's not the security that we want. We want the users to be able to use it. Okay, so this is one. One other possibility is it was a difficult verification for the attacker only. Okay, this is a technique that is available. I know very, very few applications that use this. Okay, because this part is the most difficult, protecting the key as any private key. Okay, storing the key outside the credential stores. Okay, yeah, I should have filled this up. Okay, those of you familiar with enterprise application security, okay, will be able to tell me that if I'm creating a hash map function, okay, and I'm using a private key, I'm using a salt, and I'm using a password. And like you said, instead of storing the salt in some other table, I'm storing the private key completely outside the system. How do I do this? What kind of credential store, what kind of private key store do I use outside the credential store?
We can create an XML, I think so that we can create an XML file and we can link that XML file with the database so that they can link hardware.
So if he has access to the database, you're assuming he doesn't have access to your file system.
Yeah, maybe.
That is not the recommendation here. Saying it should not even be on the same server.
Yeah.
Okay. The private key should never leave the key store. So typically, okay, what you have is some sort of a hardware key store. Okay, which is completely secure hardware that is meant to store only private keys. Right? Some of those pieces are sold upwards of 20 lakhs. So you install one of those, okay, and then the vendor will tell you, sir, agar kuch ho jayega na, to you'll never be able to get the private key. So please install 2 of them. Good for the vendor, bad for you, bad for your customer more often. Okay, because he has to buy 2 of those boxes, right?
So for every password verification, you also.
So yes, for every password verification, what happens is that your application retrieves the salt, adds the password that has been given by the customer. So this comes from the web, this comes from your database. These 2 are sent to your key store. And there, this hash map algorithm is done and the result is sent to you for you to compare. And say, if it is yes, then it has come through. So that means you will never know the key. Okay? You will know the salt, the user will know the password. This is the most secure way of doing it. Okay? If you don't want to do hardware piece, you can also write a server, okay, which does it and make sure that the server security is very strong. Harden the server, make sure that the private key never leaves the place out of the server. Okay? And it only gives you a yes or no answer.
So how do you fetch the private key securely?
You don't fetch the private key at all. the fundamental thing about key management here. Okay, so the proper key creation and key management is absolutely important. Why is key creation important? If the all private keys, okay, the asymmetric key cryptography depends significantly on randomization. If your random number generator is weak, then after seeing a sequence of keys, somebody can predict the next key that is going to come out. So key creation is a very important thing. Random number generations and bugs in random number generators are significant weakening points. Okay, so those of you who have heard of dual EBRG elliptic key cryptography, okay, this was a huge scandal last year. RSA had used this as part of their BSafe product. Okay, but the elliptic curve itself and the algorithm was mined by NSA, or at least allegedly mined by NSA. Okay, whether RSA knew it, didn't know it, it will never be known, because you only have to take their word for it. Okay, so what happened is that the random number generation and the private key and public key pair generation was compromised, so that people could easily crack. Okay, so you need to avoid those. Okay, last month FreeBSD had a problem with its random number generator, so they fixed it. Okay, so we need to be clear about it. Creation and management, both of them are important. A private key can never come out of that place.
This is an interesting topic.
Yes. So this is the best thing, because this imposes difficulty for the attacker only. The only thing you guys need to take care of as developers is to make sure that you're using the proper API and proper design to send it and get it back. Okay, and of course this needs to be secured. Okay, either use a hardware key store or a separate dedicated key store. And if you are really building Google-like web scale systems, make sure these are scalable. You don't want this to be the bottleneck. At the same time, into your corporate email system, 1,000 users, morning 10 o'clock, I don't know, mail administrators will know. Okay, morning 10 o'clock, maximum number of simultaneous logins hit the mail system. And if the mail system is depending on this for login, okay, you don't want this to choke. Okay, guys are trying to log into the mail, and then he goes for a cup of coffee and comes back hoping that his login will be complete. That's a bad design. So make sure this is scalable if you're building systems for very heavy use.
On the previous slide,
this one?
Yeah. You said we can use a hardware system for that. So this HMAC SH256 hardware system, does it return an encrypted string?
Yes, it does.
It returns the encrypted string
Yes.
that is stored in your database.
Yes.
And then you can verify.
And then you can verify. But neither your server nor your DBA nor an attacker can do it without breaking your keystone.
Obviously, this hardware cannot be on another system on the same on the internet. But I can
Preferably not on the internet.
connect it using
Preferably not on the internet. Yes.
I can have it on the same server.
Yes.
And then
not on the same server, but within the same network, protected network.
Yeah, like if it's the hardware, I can actually plug it into my computer.
No. It is a server by itself. It's a server by itself.
So
except that these servers are made specifically to be key stores. Okay, so there are sensors inside that destroy the private key if anybody tries to tamper with them. Okay, so there is tamper-resistant sensors, and then inside the memory chips that are used to store the private key are also, epoxy coated or stuff like that, which are resistant to any chemical or other attacks. Okay, so we have a few hardware hackers. I don't know how many we have here. Okay, what we do is that try and pull the flash chips off, or try and probe the flash chips to see what is stored inside. Okay, a hardware hacker can do that. So these are made to resist those pieces also. Okay, for those of you who want to look, go and Google for HSMs, hardware security module. HSMs are nothing but general purpose computers, but have been engineered for private key stores. They are engineered to store multiple private keys, engineered never to let the private keys outside. Private keys are generated inside, stored inside, born and die inside. Period.
So this hardware piece has to be on the same network, but not on the internet.
Preferably on the same network, preferably on a private network. So if you have to go elsewhere, then try and have a secure connection to them. Do not allow. Otherwise, what will happen is that the moment this is outside, I can do a DOS attack on your system. I need not compromise your system. Okay? Or actually, I can compromise your system after doing a DOS attack. Very simple. I have 10 people standing crowding the door. Now nobody else can enter. There is a denial of service. And then I put a small board onto this one. Okay? Parking has been redirected. Please go to that place. Boom, gone. What happened to Lenovo is approximately, it's not based on a denial of service, but a redirection. They went and hit the registrar, okay, and then said, this is not Lenovo, that is Lenovo. And I can do that is Lenovo much better when I have a denial of service on the real Lenovo. They did it without denial of service on the Lenovo. So DOS attacks are not always meant to only cause anxiety and angst for the owner. They are also meant for misdirection, deception, whole bunch of other things, right? So this is about one way of secure password storage. Okay, salted hash with an HSM. If you don't use an HSM, use a dedicated server. Not a problem, depending on how secure you want to be and how much budget. If your budget has over 56 lakhs of rupees just for HSMs, okay, about 28 lakhs per piece. Okay, yeah, fantastic, go for that. Your budget meaning your client's budget, obviously. Okay. Otherwise, this is a possibility. Okay. There are two algorithms which are most commonly used, script and TTKDF2. The purpose of using both I have given here. Okay. So what you do is that you use the salt, you use the password, and you use an algorithm so many times you make it computationally intensive. Yeah, if you can use 10 million, fantastic. But if you are using something, use it such a high number that it becomes very expensive for an attacker to do mass attacks. Instead of cracking, 1 million hashes per second, he will be stuck to maybe 1,000 hashes per second. At 1,000 hashes per second, if you have allowed a lengthy password, let's say 25 character, 30 character passwords users are using, then without any character limitations, special characters really used, then at 1,000 characters per second, even to hash one of them, crack one of them using brute force, he is going to spend so much time, he'll give up and go find another bakra. Okay, he says, "Yaar, ye to mushkil hai. The wall is too high. I can't scale it." Okay, so he will find a lower wall building to jump over, which is a not bad thing. You protected your customer.
And these are more costly either. You just.
There is a small amount of cost. This impacts attacker more than the defender, but there is a cost to the defender. When a guy comes to log in, your server also takes this much time to do it. So scalability is an issue. Though your server is not trying to do, 1 million hashes per second. All it is doing is getting a known hash, compare it, and say, "Nah, chalo, dobara login karo," which is not a bad thing. But if it is 10 o'clock in the morning and if you're running a mail-like system and thousands of users are trying to come in, you want to scale your server authentication server properly. This scales a lot less than not doing it. But again, if you don't do this, it is less secure. So if you use this, please pay attention to scalability. Okay, if you believe some of your passwords can be attacked, okay, because of your threat model, okay, can be attacked using hardware accelerators, then use a script, don't use other pieces. This algorithm has been written specifically to resist hardware acceleration. So nothing in there in the algorithm, okay, allows parallelism, okay, allows optimization. No optimization, no parallelism, go make it, hardware acceleration doesn't work. So for example, if you're let us say a SIM card manufacturer kind of a guy and you want to put something in there and you believe this particular SIM card or an access card, Okay, people want to get into that room so badly that they will use any damn thing, any technology available to them. Then using this is a good idea.
So these are not related to web applications, but maybe
Even web applications, sometimes, for example, ICS systems. Okay, if I am running a gas turbine-based generator or something like that, okay, and or if I am running the Iranian nuclear reactor, and I am afraid that somebody will come in with one more attack, okay, then I may want to resist hardware if it is in my threat model. Threat modeling is an essential part of secure software development lifecycle. You try and imagine for this system who are the likely attackers, and you keep the threat model in mind when designing all security systems. This attacker, this is the way I will resist. This attacker, this is the way I will resist. Okay? Trying to resist every possible attacker, every possible attack technique for every piece simply doesn't make sense. Your building of the house itself becomes so expensive, yeah, rental mein le lete hain. You don't want to build that house anymore. Okay? So always it must be in proportion to the threat model. Multi-factor authentication, 2FA, as most people will understand this. Okay? This is not as simple and as easy as people imagine it to be. It is very easy to make two-factor authentication the weakest point of your security because you mandated it and people are desperately trying to overcome it. Yaar, mere kaam karna hai. I want to do my work. I don't want to be stuck with this screen lock that comes on every 5.5 seconds. Okay, so Marissa Mayer apparently doesn't use screen lock on her phone. Marissa Mayer, CEO of Yahoo. Okay, apparently that was the last report. Maybe she's using it. I hope she's using it now. Why? Because she uses the phone so often. Every 5 seconds, if the damn thing gets locked, it is coming in the way of my work. So if you don't do your two-factor authentication well enough, people will work around you. Okay, they'll say, "Ye nahi use karna hai, disable it." Okay, so you need to do it. Multi-factor authentication principle is that you are using user ID password here, and some additional information, another bit of information comes from out of band, not through this web console. Some out of band. There are many different techniques that have been tried. The tried and tested has been email. Okay, how many of you have Gmail accounts that you're protected with two-factor authentication? Good. Okay. How many of you use SMS for two-factor authentication? Not bad. Okay, SMS is pretty decent. Okay. Transactions, banking transactions, you almost always get authentication codes. ICICI Bank, I think, sends by email, by SMS. Transaction authentication codes. Okay. But if you're into bulk transactions, today you want to transfer salary for 100 people and you're doing it one by one, you will bypass it or you will change your bank. So you need to find a different way of doing it. You can't do bulk work with this. Right? So mobile native apps, good. How many of you use Google Authenticator? Only 1, 2, 3, 4. No, not bad. So it is a little different from SMS. Considered slightly better. How many of you use Google Authenticator for your Dropbox? Do you know that Google Authenticator actually has an API and you can use it for your own applications? Pardon me? Yeah. Okay. So fantastic. Mobile native apps, you can do it. Dedicated tokens, security cards. Okay, they have been hacked, source code has been published, but yeah, people still use them. Okay, hopefully algorithms have changed. Okay, printed tokens. People have started issuing printed tokens as a cheap technique. Okay, आप ये print करके रख लो a QR code and you show it to the camera. So you have your password. So something that you have and something that you know is two factors. Your password is what you know, and a physical key is what you have. Okay, and if it is a QR code, yeah. But if your threat model, if you're a villager, and if your threat model is your mukhia coming and slapping you and taking your money away, yeah, by all means, your password and IT systems are protected well. But after you withdraw the money, okay, rural unempowered ladies, for example, the head of the house takes the money anyway. Threat model. Threat model is extremely important. Okay. So, but yes, if the threat model permits and if you're using MFA, printed tokens are not bad. Okay. OAuth is another piece when you're using multi-factor authentication or even otherwise if not. If your one application has to have access to your other application, OAuth requires key exchange. Okay. And today the only way is that you go register as a developer, the guy gives you, you cut and paste it into your code. Heaven forbid if this key is lost. All your applications have to stop working or they're insecure. So it's a whole new challenge by itself. With this, I think we're coming to the end. I think she's getting very impatient. Okay. So basic, how do you handle unavailable MFA devices? Okay. My phone I forgot back in my car and now I want to log in here. So most folks, you guys are already familiar. You can print codes and keep backup codes. So something like that. Some sort of a fallback mechanism. If not phone, the same authentication code also comes on email. Possibility. Or I call a customer support and say, look, I know I lost my phone. Now I want to log in, help me log in. Generate a one-time code for me and send it on my email. Possibility. This is an interesting question. When is MFA not available in mobile app scenarios? Remember, the key thing about MFA is out of band. If there is a primary band in which you are accessing your application, your second factor authentication has to happen out of band. If you are accessing your application on your own mobile and the SMS also comes on to your own mobile, there are enough number of applications that can access your SMS on your mobile, WhatsApp, Telegram, okay? Whole bunch of other applications, they can access your SMS. So you might as well not have a second factor authentication. So if your application access method is on a mobile device, whether it is a tablet, whether it is a smartphone, and if the tablet or smartphone is going to have a SIM card in it, trying to send the second factor to the same SIM card is not exactly good security. Because when you lost the device, you lost the first factor and second factor. Right? Anyway, remember me has been checked in or autofill has been checked in. तो पासवर्ड तो है ही और जो टू फैक्टर ऑथेंटिकेशन का एसएमएस आता है उसी डिवाइस में not much help. So as users, okay, as developers, there is not much that you can do. We try to look at it, we don't do anything. You cannot check whether the registered mobile number SIM is already on the device. That is not easy. Okay, so rather as users, what you will need to recommend is that please don't put your two-factor authentication SIM onto the same access device. Thank you very much. Okay, put a guide out there.
Okay. Would it help if you see, okay, this is your regular device and you're accessing it from some other thing?
Oh, those are additional considerations. Those are additional security pieces. We are not covering the entire gamut of access control. Access control and other pieces are also coming in. It's in fact towards the end. It is number 7 and we put it after number 8. Okay, because it's a vast piece. I can talk a whole day on access control. Forgot password design. Many a system has been broken through forgot password design. Okay, UHVBM. Okay, UHVBM. If you are a subscriber, okay, you put in your subscriber number and you say forgot password, change my email address. You can change. So if you know her subscriber number, by all means you can go and start getting her bills. Why you would want to fill her bills is another matter. An attacker, why would he want to pay your bill? Okay, but yeah, a system design like that from an IT system design point of view is a huge problem. Okay, even today UHBVM website allows you. If you have if you live in Panchkula, okay, you can type in your meter number or subscriber number and you start getting somebody else's bills. At a minimum, you can, it's a sensitive information disclosure. You know AC on kar rahe ki nahi, and then you can drag in office. Okay. So, yeah, it's a huge model, especially for officers and security researchers. Okay, if I am running a hash tracker on my system, or if I am doing Bitcoin mining on my system, at my home, okay, my electricity usage pattern leaks, based on the size of my house, what activities I'm doing. Okay, so you don't want that information to go out. Okay, घर में कितने लोग हैं? You for 10 days you are going away to the reviewers and your electricity consumption shows that the last 10 days you have not used because it's only 2/3 of what your normal monthly bill is. Then I know the house has been locked for a long time. Don't want that to happen. Okay, so forgot password design, please pay attention to it. When people are changing passwords, ask for additional information. Don't allow password change to happen without asking for existing password. Or if it is forgot password, sorry, what am I talking? Forgot password, you cannot ask for existing password, but you ask for additional pieces. For change password, ask for existing password. For forgot password, ask for additional personal information. Okay, there are cheat sheets out here.
But you were right also, I think, so this because Gmail does ask you for your previous password sometimes.
Yes. So they're trying to find out. Somehow tell me that you are not trying to take this password. So that's the attempt as security application security developers. We need to look at it. Okay.
Small word is surrounded with so many things. Password, forget password, authentication, and saving it. We can see it's a vast topic and we have to be sure and very important for everyone. Coming up to the next is cross-site scripting.
I ate up for more than half an hour.
It's very important topic actually. Each topic is important.
By the way, XSS is taking over as number one. In order to maintain its number one status, injection had to be made from SQL injection to regular injection. That is any sort of command injection, XSL.
Hi, welcome back to the OWASP Apps Tutorial. My name is Sherinoff, and this is episode number 3, Cross-Site Scripting. This series is for anybody who wants to learn more about building secure web applications. And in this episode, we're going to focus on one of the most serious and prevalent vulnerabilities out there, cross-site scripting, usually abbreviated XSS. Now, cross-site scripting is a very serious problem, affecting a large majority of applications on the web. And unfortunately, many developers aren't even aware of the problem. On top of that, XSS is messy, there are multiple variations, and there are no easy solutions to fix the problem. In this episode, we're going to focus exclusively on the most serious variant called stored cross-site scripting. But don't worry, we'll come back and discuss other variations in future episodes. So, in the next 10 minutes, I'll show you 3 simple examples of cross-site scripting. One will be super high level, the other 2 will be more detailed, and towards the end of the program, I'll point you to some resources where you can find out more about preventing this attack. So, let's get started. Cross-site scripting is one of the most well-known vulnerabilities listed in the OWASP Top 10. And by the way, if you haven't read through the entire Top 10 list, I highly recommend you do so. A PDF of the list can be downloaded from OWASP.org. XSS has been in every edition of the OWASP Top 10. And in the 2010 edition, cross-site scripting holds the number 2 spot, just under SQL injection. XSS is extremely prevalent in web applications and very easy for attackers to find. Plus, exploiting an XSS vulnerability is usually pretty straightforward. The attacker just needs to know a little JavaScript. XSS is not tied to a particular platform or language. All popular web programming technologies are susceptible to cross-site scripting. At this point, let's dive right into example number 1, which will demonstrate at a very high level an XSS attack. But first, to give it some context, I want to recap the attack we learned in the last episode at the same high-level perspective. Let's assume an attacker targets a totally random website, like maybe a popular gaming forum. As was illustrated in the previous episode, the attacker crafts a malicious request containing SQL and then sends it across the internet to the target website. The illegitimate SQL runs against the database server, and unauthorized data is returned back to the attacker, such as email addresses and passwords. So the target of SQL injection is clearly the database server. However, in cross-site scripting, things are not always so straightforward, because the target of a cross-site scripting attack is usually another user's web browser. Basically, XSS is another form of injection. This time, it is script injection, and the vast majority of these attacks are written in JavaScript. So
Now we are talking about the front attack. We talked about from the database. Now it is the browser.
Cross-site scripting is when attackers use vulnerabilities in your web application to distribute malicious scripts to other users, which then run in those other users' web browsers. To illustrate this at a high level, imagine an attacker posts a comment to a popular gaming forum, and inside of his comment is some malicious JavaScript. The attack is sent to the game forum, where it is stored like all other comments. But from that point on, any user who views the post in the forum will receive the attack, making for very unhappy users. So now that we understand what the attacker is trying to accomplish, let's look at another example in a bit more detail. Imagine an employment website where the intended workflow of the application is that an employer visits and posts a new job opening. And to keep things simple, imagine there's only a single field, the job description field. The employer enters the description and clicks submit. The employer's browser then sends the request across the internet to the employment site's web server, where it will be stored in the database. From that point on, every time a visitor views that job opening, a dynamic web page will be created. And as you can probably imagine, the generated web page will consist of some static content, which includes the header, footer, images, and so forth, and the dynamic content, which is the job posting. The static and dynamic contents are merged together. And the HTML response is then sent down to everybody who views that particular post. Of course, the end users don't normally see the HTML, nor are they aware of the static and dynamic nature. They simply see the browser's representation of that HTML. So the web application does seem to work. However, it is definitely not secure. So to illustrate what can go wrong, imagine the same scenario as before, only this time, a malicious prankster decides to have a little fun with the employment website. Like before, a job description is entered, only this time, some JavaScript is appended to the end of the description. Note, for the sake of legibility, I am displaying just a single JavaScript comment. Obviously, that's an actual JavaScript, or at least reference an external JavaScript file. The attacker hits submit, and the request is sent across the internet, where it's stored in the employment site's database. Just like before, the web application merges the legitimate static content with the user's applied dynamic content. Only this time, the dynamic content contains some malicious JavaScript, which is the XSS attack. The two pieces are merged, and like before, the resulting response is sent to all visitors. The visitors will still see the employment posting. In fact, there usually won't be any visual indication of the attack at all. The malicious JavaScript will quietly run in the user's web browser. At this point, you might be wondering what attackers can actually do with JavaScript. Well, one common attack is to steal another user's session ID, which can be accessed through the JavaScript document.cookie value. If an attacker can steal a user's session ID, the attacker can then jump into that victim's session without a username or password. JavaScript.
So from the current page, document.cookie can pick up the entire session details.
Can also be used to rewrite any part of the web page. In some cases, it may simply deface the website, but a more serious attack can easily be imagined. For example, if an attacker finds an XSS vulnerability in a banking website, it can easily overlay a login screen on top of any legitimate page. A normal user would not think twice about entering their credentials, since the URL would be back to their own bank website. Only this time, the username and password will be sent directly to the attacker. Now, at this point, people often ask if we can simply block the script tag and remove the XSS threat. The answer, unfortunately, is no. Example number 3 illustrates an XSS attack without the script tag. Imagine a guestbook application that prompts a user for their name and then generates.
That was merging a script with it, and now without a script. How the attack
It's a web page.
It's a normal HTML.
In a text box. A legitimate user will type in their name, send it to the web server, which is then inserted in the text box's value attribute. Now imagine a malicious user who enters their name, followed by some HTML and JavaScript. Like before, the user's data is sent to the web server. Only this time, the message alters the text box itself. The quotes line up perfectly, and a new JavaScript event handler has now been inserted. So when any victim hovers their mouse over that particular text box, the event handler will activate and malicious JavaScript will run. Hopefully, at this point, we can agree XSS is a serious problem. So let's talk about fixes. XSS vulnerabilities are the result.
Anybody who's gone through this kind of a problem before? We have to be sure that we test the code for this aspect also. And we have very simple thing.
Not properly validating and encoding user-supplied data. So, in order to stop cross-site scripting, we have to educate web developers how to effectively validate and encode user-supplied data. For proper validation, make sure we're using a positive whitelisting approach. And for encoding, realize that encoding must be contextual. That is to say, you will have to encode the data differently depending on where it's placed in a web page. The idea of contextual encoding can be quite confusing. In fact, I will go over this concept in great detail in a future episode. But to find help now, let's turn to the OWASP website. Once you are there, search for the OWASP XSS Prevention Cheat Sheet. This cheat sheet will give you more information regarding the different contexts you need to be familiar with. The contexts are clearly listed out and defined. I highly recommend reading through this entire cheat sheet. As for the encoders, I encourage you to download the OWASP eSAPI project, which contains multiple contextual encoders necessary for properly preventing cross-site scripting. One final note. In this episode, we only covered a fraction of the overall threat that is range reflective, down base, and even a way to run cross-site scripting against Flash and Flex applications. We will try to cover all of these variations in future episodes.
So what is in XSS tag? Basically the script, you can see here, document.cookie will read the entire page session and the image.srs passing the back URL. The entire page session I can view. Then document.body.inner.html is equals to port link Cypress code. So entire inner HTML can be overwritten by this from the browser itself. Impacts is session hijacking, site defacement, undermining CSRF defense, site redirections, load of remote, data theft, keystroking, logging, attackers using XSS a lot. How we can prevent? In .NET we have encoders, built-in encoders, that is your HTTP utility, which has server.html encode. What does it do is, it will replace your open tag with a simple plain text, right? That is &LT, which tags, once it is into a plain text, it will never be injected. So these are the various Razor View engine, data binding view, libraries are available within the net. You have to just explore and include into your development. This is your open tag. It gets replaced with &LT and semicolon. Same way your closing tag gets replaced with &TT. That's good. So the Java encoder libraries are available within the OWASP link. You can download and integrate once you are doing your code. So that will really help you out. Java JSP is vulnerable to XSS, so these are the coding samples and the solutions given along. And this all libraries are available with Java Encoder project. You can get the updates from the OWASP.org website. These are the HTML context, CSS context, JavaScript context. The major part is we need to convert the entire tag system to your normal HTML to your plain text. These are another encoding libraries available for ROR reform project. Then HTML sanitizers projects. Now what we do is antivirus के लिए हम sanitizers use करते हैं आज के लिए. उन्होंने भी उसका नाम दे दिया HTML sanitizers so that we can avoid keep going for a simple using your HTML tags. DOM-based XSS defense, JavaScript encode and delimit untwisted data as quoted strings. You have to encode HTTP, encode and decode. HTML encode and decode has to be utilized here. Rendering methods like inner HTML, I showed you one example right now, should be avoided. Rather than using evaluator, directly use a JSON parser so that it can compile and then send the code for you. Then for the jQuery, instead of safe is .text rather than .html. Coming up to the next is insecure direct object reference. We always use an ID here, that is a customer ID or कोई भी हमने unique ID, whatever the IDs we are referring to, user IDs, we sometimes get the details. We give 1, 2, 3, 101, 102. Are we doing that? Or are we doing something for the IDs? जो हम एक ID generate करते हैं for anything in your development, are we using 1, 2, 3, 4 in numbers?
Right?
Huh? What is insecure? Now you can see one application example I just put in here. I'm just getting my details, and in the browser, once I move in, I can get the details in the father. That is the customer ID is equals to 3. So I'm easily accessing those IDs. How to protect that ID, right? Here we are using a filter to just see how can I override that customer ID to 3 to 4, 4 to 5. I can access the data of any ID because हमें पता है हम randomly generate कर देते हैं, or simply we save it into our database, right? Without any knowing, because we are not aware. Maybe our intention is to save the data in a correct format, but the hijacker's intention is to get the data back. So we have to make sure whatever we are storing, it has to come into a formatted form. So what avoid this? Instead of method signature, is now a ID की जगह आप use करिए GUID. This global unique identifier. That is, what will happen? A unique ID will be given to each customer, and it will not be vulnerable to any kind of attacks, right? Whenever we browse a website, we browse it without seeing what all things are going into that website. If we move into depth, we might be able to trace certain things, we might be able to get the data. Since we are the persons who are developing it, we need to make sure we are giving certain aspects, wherein small little aspect will also help the clients to help. So here is the customer ID. Coming up to security misconfigurations. That is, Rochik is going to take that part.
UID sounds like library.
It's a part of .NET. So for PHP, GUID ki jagah they can use.
Where you can generate your, instead of using auto-driven number, you can have your own like MD5 of the number or some kind of hash of the number. Referencing, not the right.
We need to say that the reference in our database so that we need to.
Yes, and then check for the sections also. For example, you have PDFs, right? You have 1.pdf, 2.pdf. That will be very simple to attack. If I know the URL, so I can put 2 instead of. Like, so you have to check first of all the section if the person is logged in at that point of time, or if the person is authorized to access that PDF. So it should not be that simple that 1.pdf. For example, in your if you're storing MP3s in file, you store 1.mp3, 2.mp3. It should not be that simple to get it. It should be some random number, like CDN users. So if you upload any image in your Facebook, if you use a URL, it's not your name.jpg, something number underscore. So that's, you cannot predict what is the next program. That's. Coming back to this is basically not related to more developers, but still security misconfiguration. So anybody who's trying to hack you will try to find out what exactly the website is developing. If it's in PHP or Java, what web server are running on, what OS is there, and what is the version of that, and then they can find out vulnerabilities and attack you. So idea is to make them harder for them to get your information.
For example, if you view your response header, you'll know if it's Java, there is a specific cookie, what is web server using, which version in PHP, they'll give you what version of PHP using. That is one. Number two would be, suppose there is an error, like using explanation, they put some special character, your query failed. Now, during development, we want it to show all the exact error, like line number this is the error. So we will not want that information to be on production servers. So if you see your there is a developer mode, there is a production mode. So whenever you upload your server, it should be the information should not be leaked. Information regarding your web server, it should be about what programming language you're using, what is the error, what exactly error. For that matter, it should not even like 404 or 400 or maybe 500 error. If you use Twitter or maybe Facebook, if there is an error, they'll say simple custom error page. It doesn't say if it's a custom what kind of error it is. Say our server has made a boo-boo, please try some of that. So something like the attacker should not know what I have done. If the source is there or not, if I made the server crash, it should not let you know. So for that, you have to make some configuration in your web server. If you're using frameworks, you have a custom error page, and you can create a simple error without showing the error codes. Obviously, during development, you want to show it, and when you move it, it should not show.
How the phishing attacks work?
Phishing would be not like that, but again, phishing basically means you create a web page similar to that, suppose like Twitter or maybe PayPal, only the URL is different. And different, like it doesn't mean like PayPal, it would be like abc.paypal.com or maybe abc.paypal.xyz.com. So it looks like PayPal, everything is same. So you have a look at that and you start entering the information, and then you're phishing. So your information is you're putting the information knowing that it's not a fake website. That is how phishing works. Phishing also has two things. But this is nothing to do with phishing again. We can come to that. This is basically when you hack a website or attack a website, the error should not be giving too much information.
Actually, I did got a notification from Google. I created a WordPress-based website, and I received a control from Google, and there was a mentioned thing that there was a phishing code into your
setting. So that basically possible reason, but
it wasn't. It wasn't the code.
So your code is not phishing. The thing is, you have uploaders, right? So possible reason could be malicious code, malicious HTML page is posted on your WordPress site. So that is basically your website is a bot. Suppose like you get an email and there is a link. Like I said, look at PayPal lookalike or Yahoo lookalike login page. That is not stored in the hacker server. That will be stored on some other server like yours. So any server which is allowed people to upload files, it is vulnerable to that. So what basically Google tried to say is that some malicious code is posted on your folder. Mostly it will be the WP uploads folder. If you scan, there will be some HTML file which is being circulated, and that is using phishing. For phishing, because people are posting there and it's submitting somewhere else using your website. So, any question regarding this? Any idea what exactly this is now? So this is again a lot of accesses and everything. Doesn't matter which programming language you're using, which framework you're using, because ultimately it comes to the client. Right. So you have to do some kind of configuration. So how exactly you can do it? You can start from the OS. Like whenever you have access the application, there is a internet, then there is your OS, then your web server, and then your application. Before hardening your application, you can harden the OS. And obviously there is a system admin job, but just for information, you can just block the ports. Again, if your website is on 80 port, like HTTP, so only that port should be open. If it's on SSL, then 443. And for access, it could be 22 port. Then every other port should be blocked. Block means from the outside world. So anybody on public network should not access that. That is OS admin. Make your latest updates. If you're Windows, using Windows, then update it. So most of the security bugs they'll fix in that by themselves. Then comes your obviously this is web server level. So web server level, like in Apache, you can do custom error pages or deny cross-site scripting. There is a small tag, security tag you send in every course, so it will not allow any XSS or cross-site scripting to work. and for that matter, iframes. So external iframe will not work. Even if somebody tries to manage to put the iframe code using XSS, so it will not run because suppose this is site your abc.com. If your URL is xyz.com, it will not run. So there will be iframe will be same origin. You can use iframe as long as the same domain. So these are all kind of settings you don't have to do in the code. It will be done by your web server configuration. If you're using some kind of Tomcat, a JBoss, maybe any other good web server, or maybe a ticket server, they'll have all the settings in there. Any questions so far regarding this? Last topic.
So, the one you just said, so cost and this thing are related. It doesn't allow the iframe.
Yes. And there is a small tag like in your SGXs. If you use Apache, there is an SGXs. You can put small tags that it will not allow cross-site scripting to run or XSX code to execute on your server. And for that, there are many other codes also. They will not make your cookies secure or HTTP only. There's another like XSX, what it does, document.cookie. It will let you read document.cookie if it is not HTTP only. It's a small flag. This is a mitigation basically. If you're using any programming language or using web server configuration, make it HTTP only. That means if a cookie is made by this website, it will only be read by that website.
And it's all configured and
yes, most of them.
I had configured a client like their insertion form was made in JavaScript. But I had asked from the manager why it is in JavaScript, why it is not in HTML. Because in JavaScript, when we are building, it's taking a time. In HTML, we just do what we asked. He had told to tell me what the truth behind that. I think there is the access why they were using JavaScript form.
JavaScript form, where you mean JavaScript posting by JavaScript?
Yeah. Code form was in JavaScript.
So your posting by is XML.
Yeah, we were creating like elements as document dot create elements.
Right. So basically, instead of HTML, you are having the elements created during runtime. So that is a good job, but it is actually not the browser. That is one way of doing it because it will be using the RAM.
They told me that the browser doesn't make a cache of that JavaScript.
Of course.
But if we are creating a HTML form, it is creating a cache of
Yes. Just for performance, it is cached basically. So HTML when you refresh it, it will be the same one. It will change it. Using JavaScript, it will be creating on the runtime. Again, configuration. This is in .NET config. So this is what I'm saying that HTTP is HTTP only. And debug of, so this is depending on the web server, do not display error messages or SQL queries. So this should be all obviously, you should know what is the issue was, it will display on the web page.
This is encrypting and decrypting of your web config. That if you are using your web config, anybody .NET? So we'll skip this.
So I think the last part would be unvalidated redaction format. So this is in WordPress if you're using on any other site that if you log in and there will be a URL redirect to. And if you say redirect to say abc.com, that means for example in Facebook, you have all the posts on your wall, when you click it, you go to that post, right? So that would be a malicious website. And that if people are sharing you trust in Facebook, you're seeing it's a Facebook, when you click it, it goes to the third malicious website. So what they do is you use some kind of HTML with that. You try one thing, you use any URL and you post it your custom URL. Facebook will say this is not generated by me, and if you want to leave Facebook, go ahead, but I'm not redirecting you. So there's kind of HTML with that. That basic, and another thing is this is get. Another would be something like PayPal or maybe some other third-party waiver. What you do is you send the control to the other third party, and there's a callback URL. Then after successfully operation, you send back using the callback URL. Now what you can do is using some firewall or something, you can change the callback URL. So the person goes to PayPal, pays, and after payment it goes to some other site. Now to avoid that, again, there's an HMAC. So what you do is using HMAC, you use the URL and you hash it and you create a code with that. So before sending, they check if it's a correct URL before sending and then send it back. And they already take it to one side. So I think we'll speed it up. And any other query regarding this? We can call it a day. Thank you so much.
I think all of you are very tired and restless, right? Both of you are tonight. We'll do one thing, okay? We'll stop this, okay? What I will do is that, yes, as I threatened you in the beginning itself, there is always a commercial and there is always a route for you to the next one. Go ahead, leave your email addresses with us, whoever want to regularly attend our monthly meetings, okay? And at the next monthly meeting, March 7th, okay, I will be covering access control and content security policy to the extent time permits. Okay, I've taken a 50-minute window for that. Within 50 minutes, CSP overview can be given definitely. Access control, maybe overview also can be given. Okay, role-based access control is something that all of us are familiar with, but we always implement wrongly. Okay, but what I will introduce is what we call as attribute-based access control. Okay, for those of you who don't want to spoil your Saturdays like you did today, by all means go to NIST web search on ABAC. That is the latest guidance that NIST has given. I love that document. It's only a 28-page document, unlike most of the documents which are 200, 300-page documents, right? But it is very heavy, 28 or 26 pages. Okay? It's a very heavy document. So for you to understand the concepts, for you to try and implement them, it would take some time. And if you want to discuss ABAC, if you want to discuss content security policies, yes, bug these guys, have one more session here, or alternatively, come March 7th to our monthly meeting, okay? Or of course, Google is your friend, right? Any questions?
Yes, if we are using a framework, some majority of these securities are written. What can you do to enhance that security?
Okay, did we cover secure configuration? We didn't cover secure misconfiguration. Now, how many of you guys paid attention to this one? Frameworks don't always cover this, and this is one of the biggest holes that people leave out. Okay, the question is, why should developers know it? Okay, I put it on the slide. Developers need to know it because if you guys don't put it on your dev servers and testing and staging servers and test whether your app is working, your app will fail when put in production. And the first thing that the production guy does is misconfigure. Okay, sir, nahi chalta hai. For example, at my home, I'll tell you a year ago, okay, somebody brought an old iPhone and the damn thing won't connect to my WPA2. So the first suspicion is maybe the phone doesn't support you. थोड़ा ना security कम करते हैं. Okay, कम कर दिया. फिर भी नहीं चला. थोड़ा और कम करते हैं. चल गया. And my home Wi-Fi was left in an insecure configuration for ages as long as that friend kept coming up. Otherwise, like, the guy gets upset. Right? So it's a problem. Was that you? Okay. So anyhow, the point is that with your app, the same thing happens. Okay. So two things when you're using frameworks. Number one, most frameworks don't go secure by default. So you need to know what your secure framework does and what your framework supports. Some things it does secure by default. Something it supports security, but you have to do some work for it. Right? Most often they have to do with configuration. Some of them will have to do with design. For example, E-framework. Okay, it doesn't warn you when you write inline queries. Okay, it gives you all options. Inline query, ignore, boss. Now it is up to you to know and not do that. It is up to you to write the parameterized queries, and it supports those classes.
If we are going with completely by the guide of the framework, the security guide of the framework.
Not all frameworks come with good guides.
So may I
think the components, understanding the concepts is extremely important. ROR may be different, yeah, we both right.
So specifically for ROR, like you are damn right, that Rails has a security guide. You are coming from that background, and many of us are also coming from that background. Rails has an absolutely fabulous security guide. They have pointed out some kind of misconfigurations. Like they mentioned that by default, Rails comes with cookie-based session store. When you create a Rails new app, it comes with that thing. So thereby is that there are some exploits which can use it, like a replay attack. So go through it, go through the guide. We won't get into deep with that. So that's one. There's also another. Just imagine, you give a user to design like a blog post. Just imagine a blog post engine. You are able to have rich text in it. Ultimately it exports to HTML. So now I hijack that post, and I also include some JavaScript piece. And when you're rendering that blog post, you would definitely choose with one of the insecure methods to render that blog post, which allows plain HTML to be embedded. So filtering out all those scripts, that becomes an onus on you. So I'll show you one of the applications. I won't disclose it to everyone, which uses it. I am not sure if it uses the secure version of it, or if we are stripping out the JavaScript. It's an internal app, so we should connect and we'll discuss that. So there are many exploits that are beyond the default configurations, and being aware of them helps you while you are making some decisions, like to use an insecure method for rendering whatever text on the HTML page. Is it safe? So that becomes, these things help for awareness. So
bottom line is the same. The buttons are there, the knobs are there. It is up to you to turn the knobs and push the buttons. Some of them are pre-pushed and done in frameworks, but usually there are quite a few topics where the developer has to take special attention. He has to pay special attention and design the security improvements. Using a framework is usually better than not using a framework, but it is no guarantee. You have to use the features. That's the idea. That's the summary. So after this, how many of you asked whether SSL 3.0 can be disabled or not? Should be disabled or not? Should be disabled. TLS1, SSL 3.0 disabled. Otherwise, there are specific attacks that have come last few months against that. How many of you understand what is HSTS? I'm focusing on just this, on the security configuration, HSTS. Did we cover HSTS? Pardon? Okay. So HSTS is basically forcing security for a website. Okay. The first time a user gets onto a website, if the web server sends an HSTS header and says, from now on this website will be available, make a note, Mr. Browser, never access this website without HTTPS. The browser remembers it and then afterwards forces HTTPS. Prevents all sorts of man-in-the-middle SSL strip attacks. Yes, please.
I have a question that once in a while, for the last 2 years ago, I think I have installed the SSL certificate on the server. Okay, then there was a unique key. I think very long written unique key was passed to me that it has to be within the file. So that key is the SSL certificate kind of thing, or
no?
It encrypts the data?
That is simply to show that this is an authorized application, which whatever is the module that you're using can recognize your application.
That is
the key itself is always in a key store.
So the encryption pattern is different towards
we will need to go in depth into SSL, how SSL works or TLS works a little later. The idea is simple. There is a private key, there is a public key. The clients know the public key so that anything that the server encrypts in the private key and sends, server rarely ever does that. It's actually you that needs to do it. You encrypt it, the browser encrypts the user ID, password, credit card number, okay, with the server's public key, so that only the server can decrypt it and see. Okay.
So you can
there are
only
other
encrypt.
users. Pardon?
So you can only encrypt using the public key, and to
Yes.
decrypt you need the
You need the private key, and which the server side has.
right. So that might
If you are
be the
using
same
SSL
thing.
accelerators, then the private key needs to be deployed in the accelerators.
That must be
Or
the
SSL hardware offloaders. Okay, some clients of yours will want to use hardware offloaders, which during application development you may not need to take particular care, but during configuration you will need to take particular care. Because then the private key will need to be in the front end, not in the back end. If you are moving the SSL offloading to the front end. People do that for, let us say, some kind of a security pieces and some kind of performance. Most often it is done for performance. You use a hardware accelerator to handle additional load on SSL, because SSL tends to be CPU intensive on the server side. So on heavy load applications, you do SSL offloading. Okay, thank you so much. You have our email addresses if you want to subscribe directly, or if you can tell report, we can arrange it too. Okay. I moved it from the slides. Oh, okay. So, light. Can you turn them off? Yours is a full big name, is it? Project Choran. Without white. Anything that is not as short as this is not full, right? Okay. Send us a mail saying you're interested in becoming part of. Okay. The only threat from that is that yes, monthly you will get one mail. That is the promise. No more than one mail per month. Okay. So some stuff, small amount, and always the mail is about the next monthly.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the